with the inclement weather persisting, the conversation has shifted to the homeless and how they will be provided for, if at all, in these icy conditions. Joining us to discuss the plight of the homeless during this period is Reverend Harpe, Roux, Towers of Hope Managing Director, as well as SA Red Cross Society KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Manager Siyabonga Hlatshwayo, and Valerie Govender from U-turn Homeless Ministries. Welcome to the three of you, to the full view. Let's start with you, Valerie, in Cape Town. We've seen reports that you as U-turn Homeless Ministries have decided to open temporary safe spaces to provide emergency relief to people living on the streets. What prompted you to open the temporary spaces? Because we've been reporting, or at least hearing from the city of Cape Town, that there's ample space for the homeless. Is this not the case? Is it not enough?
Sure. Thanks so much. Well, of course, the storms have resulted in an inundation of calls to us at U-turn to try and help in terms of safe spaces, which is why we as an organization decided to open temporary emergency safe spaces for those who are in need as a result of the storm. To be really honest, there are approximately 14,000, if not more, homeless people in our city at the moment, and there are roughly just over 3,000, 3,500 shelter spaces. So already there's a need for shelter spaces in the city. And so with this effects of the storm, we know that there's going to be a need for more shelter for those living rough on the street.
So these 3,005, are those provided by the city, or this is inclusive of also the privately run ones?
Yes, the city has partnered with NPOs, and there are many organizations that's operating in this space to meet those needs of people living rough. So yeah, it is a combination.
No, these figures then, if you've got 14,000 and only 3,500 spaces, there's most certainly a greater need for more spaces. Reverend Roux, perhaps to bring it to you now, you've done immense research on the issue of homelessness and displacement. Now, in this incredibly cold and wet weather, it's surely unbearable to find refuge on the streets. What do the homeless do?
Well, it's all about an issue of trying to survive. You know, I can't imagine what it is to live on the street at night. And I mean, in Bloemfontein, one of the coldest parts of our country, the temperature goes to, you know, -6, -7, -8, even worse.
Oh, goodness.
So they just try to survive, try to find shelter somewhere, try to find things to keep themselves warm, whether it's making a fire in dangerous setups, whether it's using alcohol or other substances, whether it's using newspapers. In our city, there's no government-run shelters, no relationship with the government here. There's a few private shelters, but it's not by far enough for those trying to survive on the street tonight.
So you're saying the Free State government is in no way assisting these shelters?
No way, no relationship, no funding of in any way. I mean, if I can just hear what's happening in the Western Cape, you know, it's a different continent, the Western Cape. It's not like the Free State. You know, in the COVID times, the government had to open some shelters, and I can tell you many stories of how those shelters were, you know, not adequately run. I mean, the people from the social development on the mid-level management, they tried their best, but from higher ups, it's seemingly no care about the plight of the homeless in our province.
We'll most certainly try to reach out to them and find out what exactly is their plan, because we're hearing of this inclement weather. Currently, we're all in the cold. So one would assume a caring government would make provision for those on the streets to at least find shelter during this period. So we'll try and find out from them what exactly is being done. But insofar as the stats are concerned, how many, if you do have those figures, how many roughly are on the streets at this point?
Well, it's a guess, because when we, a year or so ago, we worked with Stats SA to try to count the homeless, it was, with all respect, a bit of a chaotic situation. I mean, my colleagues in Gauteng, in Tshwane, they on their own, they had the resources to do a count. I know in Cape Town, there's some wonderful things in place. That's why they can speak with more authority. But if you push me to make an adequate guess, I would say in the greater Bloemfontein municipality, I would say guess about anything from 2,000 plus tonight on the street. But that's a rough estimate.
And then your views on just the debate that some would have that in most instances, even if it's not just Bloemfontein, because your research goes beyond just the Free State, there's always the great debate that a number of the homeless would go to these shelters around winter, but as soon as it becomes warmer, they generally would want to live freely in the streets. Is this in fact the case?
Well, I think the first yes and no. So again, there's different reasons why people are on the street. I mean, some of the people here in Bloemfontein on the street are just people looking for a job, standing on the road, at the side of the road, looking for a piece job. And the less piece jobs they find, the fewer times they go home. And we find at the time of SASSA payments, a lot of those go home to collect their payments. So there are some on the street that really would want to have a shelter. There are some on the streets that, because all kinds of family or psychiatric problems, they need the freedom, they need the space. So it's about, it's very difficult to say all homeless and all street people are exactly the same. So I can quite understand that many homeless people say, but we don't want to live in the environments of the shelter with the rules and everything. And before judging them, to walk with them and try to figure out where are they and how do you journey with them. And that's will differ from person to person.
And probably it's worth touching on the reasons that some of them have actually given was that there is no privacy, dignity, because some would still say, even though we are homeless, we could be a couple, we could be a family and would want to be together, not put in some sort of dormitories, as if we're not adults who deserve their privacy. But let's rope in Siyabonga in KZN. Siyabonga, KZN residents have of course also been warned of the severe weather. How is the situation for the homeless there in the province? Siyabonga, please can you unmute?
Good afternoon to you and the listeners at home. The situation is quite worrying as people are quite exposed to the colds, as we've been receiving weather alert messages from the South African weather services that we are also expecting extreme weather conditions. And also on the past two days, we've been witnessing very strong wind that has led to felt fires. Many people have also been affected. That led to some people being displaced due to their homes being burnt by the running fires. The firefighters have been quite hard at work trying to control the fire that has been running in the province.
One would assume then you'd been inundated with calls for assistance. So what are the plans on the side of Red Cross?
We have been engaging with one of the most affected districts, which is King Gojao district. We've allocated a kitchen, a mobile kitchen that is going to be preparing meals for the people that are currently homeless. And also we're mobilizing blankets, mattresses to ensure that they are warm, as well as hygiene packs so that they, at least while they're still displaced, but they're still looked after. We'll continuously be keeping our ear on the ground, as well as working with disaster management centers as assessments are still continuing. Currently, we are in Kamajuba district, and earlier on we had a meeting with the Uthuwela district municipality. Also, there have been reports that have came through, including fatalities due to fire incidents as well.
And what has been the response of government throughout this period? Because we all do know that, unfortunately, adverse weather conditions in KwaZulu-Natal are not all that foreign, so one would assume that generally they've been working on this. How has the response been?
Well, first of all, there have been distribution of messages to the communities alerting them about the extreme weather conditions that are also approaching the province. And also we've seen and we've been participating in job meetings that are actually assessing preparedness to respond to any incidents that could happen. Firefighters have been quite hard at work. I was just communicating with one of the gentlemen that is leading the firefighting team. He's quite exhausted as they have not been resting that much trying to control the fires. The situation is being observed in terms of watching if anything could happen or anything could get worse. We are also being engaged as partners as well to offer support.
Valerie, now there we were saying that the 3,500 homeless shelters in the city of Cape Town are inadequate. But then we've just heard, at least from Reverend Roux, that where they are, there's nothing such as that in Bloemfontein. So even though there's 3,500, one would still hope that the issue of having the homeless on the streets would be dealt with meaningfully. What do you think could be done to address this issue once and for all? Because we still do seem to see that in as much as they're taken out of the streets, they return to the streets at some point for various reasons, and some of them legitimate.
Of course, I think one of the ways we at U-turn approach homelessness is holistically, because we understand that shelter spaces and first phase interventions through feeding and a soup blanket, those interventions might last for a short while. But the truth is, it really encourages almost a pattern of homelessness where the person is trapped in that cycle. So at U-turn Homeless Ministries, we are focused on a unique 4-phased approach that encompasses skill development, therapeutic journey, and in the past 27 years, we are able to boast actually that 100% of our U-turn graduates remain housed, employed, and sober following the interventions of the program. So what we're really encouraging is for role players, especially city and government officials, to look into a program that is journeying with a person, a client who is homeless, so that instead of just giving them a first phase intervention like a meal or safe space, they're actually journeying with them to equip them with skills to overcome what got them on the street in the first place.
That sounds wonderful that a number of your graduates have remained housed. Reverend, your take on this, how can homelessness be meaningfully addressed?
Well, I would say, again, in our context, we need the buy-in from government. I mean, there are a few privately owned shelters who is doing at least something, and I commend them. But I mean, it's like it's just, having the resources and the capacity available, like to do what U-turn is doing in Cape Town, being involved with people, trying to assess them, trying to see where are they going, what are the issues in their lives. So just giving somebody a shelter is a start, and especially in weather like this, but that's not the end all of everything. So I would love that we can have a better conversation in our province, not only Bloemfontein, but the whole of the Free State, to have a conversation with government, and really that they come to the table and work with us, not only Towers of Hope, but other NGOs trying to journey with homeless people.
All right, Reverend, thank you very much to all of you. That's Reverend de la Harpe Roux, Towers of Hope Managing Director, as well as SA Red Cross Society KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Manager Siyabonga Hlatshwayo, who's in KZN for us, and Valerie Govender from U-turn Homeless Ministries in Cape Town.